What emotion did you feel before and after the tour?
I would say before the tour, I was feeling really uncomfortable about my history of like my people, because I felt like white people were the enemy of every historical story. And I felt kind of ashamed about it, and I didn't really know how to process it and relate to the past without feeling like a villain's ancestor. But then after the tour, as I was learning more and more, it kind of shifted into like, yeah, a majority of what we learn in history, we were like the bad guys, but I can learn from that and I can be different. And there were some, people of majority that did do some really great things. They stepped out of the comfort of their white, what's the word?
Community?
Privilege. They stepped out of the comfort of their white privilege to stand up for the injustice they saw. So I decided that that's the kind of white person I wanted to be, was someone who, instead of staying and remaining in the comfort of my white privilege, I wanted to step out of it in order to help others.
And then how would you describe your experience?
Very, very emotional and eye-opening. There were a lot that I knew very surface level or ankle deep about, but learning like the extent of it was shocking in some ways, because you just don't learn about it in depth. And then there were also just a bunch of things that I didn't know. I didn't know about mass incarceration. I didn't know about the Children's Crusades. I didn't know about the jelly bean jar, which I'm still a little shook about, but yeah, just very emotional and very eye-opening throughout the entire experience.
Do you want to say what the jelly bean jar is?
Yeah, so I think one of the most jaw-dropping things that I learned about was just showing how ridiculously people did not want African Americans to have the right to vote. Because I knew that there was a poll tax, and I knew that there was a literacy test. But then when we went to the Justice Museum and
The Legacy Museum,
and we went and we saw the actual literacy exams, they had the stupidest questions. And I mean stupid. I don't use that word lightly. I save it for when it means it. And there were these jars of jelly beans in front of the test, because on the test, one of the questions was, how many jelly beans are in the jar in front of you? And that's not even, like, there's no way to guarantee, like, get that answer. You could have a doctorate in mathematics and still get that wrong. It's a guessing game. You can estimate, but it's a guessing game. And then there were others that were even more ridiculous, like how many seeds are in a watermelon, how many bubbles in a bar of soap. And you could tell just by looking at these tests, these were not, let's see if you're eligible to vote, like, based off of your knowledge of the American government. It was just there as a nuisance to keep people from voting. It was just so obviously that when you really saw it.
And what did you learn that you never knew before?
A lot. I really did walk in thinking that I knew a decent amount. I knew I didn't know everything, but I was very open to talking to people about culture and their past, and I knew more than a lot of my friends, but I just did not realize how little I still didn't, like how much I didn't know. So there were a couple things, but I think one of them was the Children's Crusade. I knew Martin Luther didn't want children to be part of the protest because he knew that they could turn violent, even if it was a peaceful protest. But these children, they were not treated like people. The first time, they were just like 1,000 children were put in jail. And then the second time, they were also put in jail despite the jails being full, so like stuffed in there. And they had like dogs put on them, and they just were not treated as people. And these weren't like 20, 30, 40-year-old strong adults. These were high schoolers, middle schoolers. So it was the fact that I never learned about that, I felt like that would be something that would be taught, because it shows a different perspective, but it didn't. Oh gosh, there were just so many things going in my head right now because there was just so much that I didn't know.
And then why should someone else go on this tour?
I think that people need to go on this tour because this history isn't just something that's in the past. It's something that's still happening today, and it's something that still affects today. And so to have such little knowledge about it puts you at a disadvantage in society, if I'm being honest, especially if you're wanting to be in a position where you can understand people, relate to people, and love people. I also think that, speaking from a white perspective, we can't just keep being in the comfort of our white privilege. We can't just assume that we don't have to know something because it wasn't our culture's past. Well, it was our culture's past, and what we don't learn from the past, we're going to repeat. And there were even things on the tour that I saw that I could see being repeated in my own life, being told to me, or that I saw, that people who consider themselves to be good, loving American citizens were doing this, and I don't even think they realized that it was based off of racism, because they don't know the history and they don't realize the context of what they're talking about or where the mindset originally came from.
The emotions I felt before was a bit nervous. I didn't really know what to pack, and then I kind of packed everything I needed the night before. But I was excited, a little trepidatious, because the stereotypes of the South are so ingrained or stereotypical that you must be going into a very dangerous, crazy place to go into the mythical South. But after the tour, the emotions I felt after the tour, let me see, was tired directly after the tour. But I think it would be understanding that a deeper sense of understanding that history that happened in that place, and how wide and long and pervasive what happened there is felt now today. And I'm very grateful for what the people did down there. And I think that goes to the next question: how would I describe my experience? Yeah, I think it would be mythical, because like the idea of the wide, expansive South, and people like Martin Luther King have sort of entered the American mythology of these people, these monuments and figures of history that you never really know what it's like being there and seeing them in real life, who they were as a person. It's speechless, maybe, seeing what most people see now as movies or a distance or separated from now, so clearly connected together through history and the environment. Any other last words on my experience? It will shock you. It will wow you. It will make you cry and feel so many emotions at the same time. I learned that a lot of people suffered, which is one of the strange thoughts I had about this trip, going to these almost massacre sites where all this crazy how these places, which seem so hard to recognize as what actually happened there, like the bridge and Birmingham, it's so hard to actually think that actually happened to normal people. That's like, why should I need to go there? Because, it's a sad place to think about how this happened to so many people. But I think it's important to learn about that and find some deeper meaning that maybe it's a mark of our progress that we can come so far and feel that what happened before cannot happen again now. But I say that's how much progress we have made, but how much progress still needs to be made. I think for everyone, they have their own reasons to go, but if anyone can relate to growing up in a rather conservative family, that this type of stuff is not really spoken about or celebrated or embraced, it's like, okay, well, let me go and see anyways, I guess test your beliefs, and if your beliefs are changed, then it's like, okay, you've learned quite a lot. And the Bible verse that that I remembered throughout the trip was Romans 12:19-21, where it says, as far as you are able, live at peace with one another, for vengeance is mine, says the Lord. And I think that summarizes my experience with this trip, feeling now that I'll live at peace with everybody, fulfilling the golden rule. And for people that I can't change because their beliefs are too deep, and people who have escaped justice in this world, vengeance is the Lord's, and that brings me peace to keep living at peace with everyone else and not get bogged down in sadness.
Before the tour, I didn't really take time out to really think too hard about it, I guess. But I was looking forward to learning, because I knew I would learn so many new things. And after the tour, I was wanting for everyone I know to go on a tour with me and to go back to some of the places where I felt I didn't get to read every single thing on the walls or see every single thing. So during the tours, it was definitely like a roller coaster of emotions, but I think that everyone should go through them because it's a place for growth, for learning, and it's a place for growth and learning. So my experience, I didn't even know what a civil rights tour was whenever I got the email about it. But then I learned what it was. But even after that, I didn't do any crazy research to try and buffer what I didn't know. I just went knowing that I would be crying or that I would learn things that just disgust me or that are horrific. But it was really good. It was a needed experience that everyone should go and do. I think the lynchings is the main thing. I didn't know that records were kept. I didn't know the difference like the true difference between lynchings and hangings, and I didn't know all of the horrific things that happened during lynchings. It was sad to hear about, sad to read, sad to see all the names of people that were lynched and the unknowns, because not everyone's name was known. So that was the largest thing that I learned that I didn't know before. I think that everyone should go on this tour because it is a part of American history. And for it not to repeat itself, we have to be aware of things that have happened, and having a good moral compass and understanding and knowing that these crazy things actually happened for real and happened not even a century ago. It's crazy to see how recent these things are, and people believe that these things didn't happen, or that it was so long ago that wouldn't happen now. But many things do happen now, and one of the museums showed current things to kind of bring everything together, which is nice. But everyone should go on this tour to learn and to spread this to other people. And like, you can go multiple times also. Like, I want to go next year and get a group of friends and family together so that we can all experience this and learn and have a conversation and not be quiet about all these things.
Before the tour, like, I definitely knew like some history, but I thought that I definitely knew that there was like a lot of stuff that was left out of it. But I thought that like I had like, a decent idea of how like civil rights history goes on. But like after the tour, I felt like I definitely didn't know as much. Like during the tour, like they didn't sugarcoat as much stuff, and then they definitely did not sugarcoat everything. So certain stuff that I was just like shocking about. For instance, when we went to the slavery museum, they were very much like, this is like the hard cold facts about American history
At the Legacy Museum.
So yeah, certain stuff. So I definitely felt more educated about civil rights stuff, and how I could just like apply it to more to like now, and just like look at like all the changes and stuff that like we still need to improve on too. So honestly, like for the most part, I definitely enjoyed my experience. I just thought that it was cool and such like a once in a lifetime experience to go through like these historical landmarks. There was like certain times though, like it was definitely like a lot at certain instances, just because it was like there's just a lot of like back to back, like certain stuff about how like American history was laid out. So like certain stuff like that was a lot, but I felt like throughout the trip, I thought that there was a nice balance between like the heavy stuff and then just like certain stuff, like whether it was like our bus rides or like making jokes or just talking to each other. I thought that was like it made a nice balance, and also just like talking things out also on the trip too, which like made it nice, because like, there was certain stuff though that it was heavy, but I felt like we needed to know it, like, you know. So personally, I feel like certain stuff, like for instance, like when we went to the Birmingham church, I definitely knew about the bombing and like what unfolded, but it was more like the aftermath of certain stuff. And just like even then when they were talking about like they painted a portrait, they were talking about like even then that was like a lot of fuss to it, just because it was a portrait of a Black Jesus, and they were very much like hesitant because like obviously they didn't want another bombing. So like so it took a minute for them for them to even like put that up. So I just thought that like because like even then like I just thought that that was just like interesting. And plus also like certain stuff like with the Birmingham bombing, they were talking about like although like obviously like it was sad, they were saying that like that was a wake up call. Like people were like they were just thinking that oh it's really just affecting like the older adults, but like just like bombing like the 4 kids, it would kind of like made the movement like go even much more faster. Just like we need to fix this. So I just thought that that was interesting, and then I also thought was interesting like even like the like certain civil rights speakers and everything. Personally, for me, like there were certain people that I like never heard of before, and just like it, just to see like how much like there was someone like I can't think of their name at the moment, but there was someone that he was like in a statue outside of the National Civil Rights Institute. And like I'm trying to think of his name, but like he had like I personally never heard of him before, and just to find out like how much of an impact that he had on the movement. And it just like cause like there are certain people that like obviously I heard of like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and etc. But like certain people like certain like distinct features like him, I was just like surprised because he was a person that like he like faced so many attacks, and like without him also the movement wouldn't obviously like wouldn't be as prevail. And I was just surprised that like I haven't like heard of him before or like in classes or in school. So I thought that was interesting too. I honestly think that like I definitely think that this tour was like a once in a lifetime like opportunity, just because just like we see it or like we'll read about it in like history books or like documentaries or TV shows, but like it's different when like we're actually there. I feel like in a way like even when we went to Selma, like I feel like you feel the emotions there like that we don't get to see like when like we're in class or in school. So I just thought that and plus like also I felt like it gives you like the unsugarcoated facts of history, because I feel like certain stuff like when we read stuff, a lot of information is left out, or even in school like we're taught the stuff, but like we're not taught the whole facts. So I just think that was like so I just think that that's one of the reasons why she should go. And then also I feel like it's like a once in a lifetime like opportunity. Just what's it called? Because even then I just felt like, because I feel like during the trip like I definitely was obviously interested in it, but like I didn't realize how much I needed it and how much information I didn't know too. So like and like because even then like just now or just before this I was referencing the trip or something that I learned. So just certain stuff like that I felt like if I didn't go on the trip I wouldn't even have known, or like it would take him like until I'm like 4 years old just to know something that just like that would just like have such an impact on like how we are now.
Well, before the tour, I was excited, so that emotion, and after the tour, I was more excited. I was just elated at things that I had learned. Even being a African American woman, there were a lot of things I did not know about my culture, so it was just so heartwarming, emotional, exciting, fantastic. There's no adjective to describe how I felt after. Wow. My experience was like none other. Again, being an African American or a black female, you think you know your culture, but I just learned so much being there. I thought I knew everything about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but again, I learned so much about Rosa Parks, about the bombing in Birmingham, and crossing the Pettus Bridge was just, phenomenal. An experience I would hope that everyone would, get a chance to enjoy. What did I learn that I never knew before? Well, just mentioning the Pettus Bridge, I thought I knew a lot, watching the movie Selma. You think you know, but just like a student, it's lifelong learning. So again, just crossing the bridge and knowing what they endured, even being unsuccessful, trying to cross, how they were forced back, and then eventually they marched on to Montgomery. So I knew about the march, but I didn't know about the details and the things that halted them from, crossing before. So that was great. Wow. Okay. Teaching a transcultural nursing course. Of course, I'm like, everyone should go to learn about another culture. But again, it's just not African American culture. I like Dr. King's dream. It's not just for African American people, it's just for all people. He wanted us to be one. So I think knowing the struggles that myself as an African American, my ancestors endured, I think it'll make us to be more kinder to one another, to be more sensitive to one another, because it was a little disheartening at times. But again, we don't know, and we perish because of lack of knowledge. But once we have the knowledge and we know better, I think we can do better. And doing better, that's learning how to treat people, the way you want to be treated. Doesn't matter your ethnicity, the color of your skin, etc. But just being better people, So when we leave this earth, our legacy will not be in vain.
So the emotions I had before their tour was like anticipation. It's kind of an excitement to see all these historic places in person for the first time. So there was a lot of excitement there. And after having gone through each of the places and seeing the exhibits that they each had, it left me with a sense of sadness overall, but there was also like hope, and there was like a gladness there too, because of the things that we have achieved over the 200 plus years that this has been going on. We've progressed so far from that it gave me hope for the future, and I was glad that I have what I have now, right? So that's how I felt before and after. I would describe it as getting to know more. I already knew a lot of what I had seen. I did my own research before then, like reading books and just searching online of things I was interested in. But when I saw everything in person, it put everything together. I had learned bits and pieces here and there, but by going through each of these exhibits, I was given a timeline to place all the things that I knew in, and I could better understand what was happening when and why it occurred. And so I was glad that all of the information that I had gathered over the years was now in chronological order in my mind, for me to be like, during this time, this was happening, and I know why it happened because of this that happened before it, right? And so I always heard about the civil rights movement growing up in school, most about anything relating to Black Americans, and going on this tour not only gave me more detail about the civil rights movement, but also the history leading up to it. And so that's what I was very thankful for. I didn't know a lot about the slave trade itself and how it operated, where it operated, and I guess how it occurred and how extensive it was. The thing that shocked me the most was when I looked at the statistical graph that they created using the transatlantic slave trade database. I saw all these red dots, hundreds, thousands, millions of them flooding to South America more than they did to North America. So that's what surprised me the most. I mean, in our country, we usually hear a lot more about the disadvantages and prejudices and racism against blacks, and the slavery that happened in our country. And seeing those numbers put things into perspective. Only about 400,000 Africans directly from Africa came to the United States over the course of the transatlantic slave trade. Of course, more came later, but that only topped about like 600,000, whereas 15 million total went to South America. during the whole slave trade era, I guess. And so seeing the difference in numbers was surprising. It shows me that yes, right, the slavery that happened anywhere from Africans to Africans was bad, but to think that America was the worst of it, or we got the most of them, would be incorrect. And that was what changed in my mind. To learn, to understand, to get a real life experience of the locations and stories and lives of not only the civil rights movement, but Black American history. Going on this tour, you'll not only get refreshed on what you already know, but your ideas of those things will change. You'll learn more, you'll understand more. And I hope, like me, you'll get a chronological timeline of everything that went down. You no longer have bits and pieces here and there, but you'll see how everything culminated and why the civil rights movement even happened in the first place, right? And so that's what I hope for people who go on this tour, is that they'll have a chance to look at American history that isn't pretty, right? No country's history is always pretty, America included, right? And so to look at our dark history and to acknowledge it, right? And to, I guess, not only acknowledge it, but to acknowledge it and say, yes, this happened, but let's move forward and try to correct what has happened and do something better, right? And to be better, to understand the history, to move beyond it, and to not repeat it.
Before the tour, I just want to learn. That's all. I feel excited and happy. But after the tour, I have so many emotions that it was overwhelming. I really don't know what to think. But most of my emotions were full of sadness. Life-changing, I will say. I didn't know much about the history, and now I can empathize more, and I can be grateful for the things that I have and the freedom that I have that other people many years ago didn't have. That so many people were killed, and all the battles that they have just to have a seat in the front of the bus, or just to be respected as a human beings. I also learned that at some point my ancestors, Latinos or Spanish speakers, also have a small battle not having the opportunity to eat in the same restaurants or walk in the same restaurants just because they speak Spanish. And that was a shock discovery for me. I was like, what? I think everybody who lives in this country has the right to learn the truth. Not only to learn what we've been told in school, but also to create our own perceptions and erase all the bias and understand the history and how that history influences the present.